Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. Lives taken due to ignorance, hate, and vigilantism. How do we survive this dystopian American society? Here we are in quarantine, trying to make sense of our new normal. And some things, unfortunately, remain the same. Some of the most gut wrenching, heartbreaking things remain the same. And so, welcome to Puffs of Thought, and let's explore some of our options and sort out our thoughts and feelings about this ugly time right now. The Minnesota riots, people are hurting. And when people hurt, they don't know how to express it, but they know that they want change, and they know that they're tired of seeing the same story again and again. For those of you who argue that black on black crime is a thing and that the black community is not concerned, I caution you that you may be speaking more about your own lack of concern. Interracial crime happens among all racial groups, and among white and black, the statistics are around the same. However, when two civilians commit acts of violence against one another, there's always a reckoning. They get their day in court and charges are brought up. You don't have to wait a week. You don't have to wait a month. No one walks free. Even if the sentencing isn't quite what you wanted, you know that for sure no one's walking away with murder. That has not been the case for a really long time when it comes to black lives. And people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I decided, it's obviously late, and I decided to come out and do this again. Let me turn on this overhead light so you can see me just a little bit better. We always look into the victim's background, but we never really look into the background of the offender. So I decided I wanted to know more about this Derek Chauvin, whatever his name is. I really don't care how it's pronounced. He's had a 19-year career and has had 20 complaints and 2 letters of reprimand filed against him. This is an article I'm reading, and I'll link it in the description below. And there's just a few things that I just wanted to point out. City council records show that he worked nights as a bouncer at a Latin club, and the former owner told this station, this ABC 30 station, KSTP TV, that Floyd also worked security for the club up until the end of last year, but doesn't suspect that they knew each other because from her experience in the nearly 20 years that she's been working at that venue, there's been dozens of security guards at a time, so they may not all know each other. In 2006, Derek Chauvin was among a group of 6 officers who opened fire on a stabbing suspect after a chase that ended when the suspect pointed a sawed-off shotgun at them. And the suspect, whose name is Wayne Reyes, sounds like a Hispanic name, was hit multiple times and died. A grand jury decided that the force was justified. 2 years after that, Chauvin shot Ira Latrell Tolles as he was responding to a domestic dispute. According to an account of the incident, The 911 operator heard a woman yelling for someone to stop hitting her, and the officers arrived, including Chauvin, and Tolles locked himself in the bathroom. According to officers, Tolles went for Chauvin's gun, and Chauvin shot him twice in the stomach. Tolles survived and was charged with 2 counts of felony obstruction. Tolles, however, told the Daily Beast that the mother of his child called police that night and he fled into the bathroom after officers broke down the apartment door. Chauvin then broke down the bathroom door and started to hit him without warning. He said he fought back in self-defense and was too disoriented to go for Chauvin's gun. Tolles said he ultimately pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge and still feels pain from the shooting, and he's quoted saying, "He tried to kill me in that bathroom." Online city records show that 17 complaints have been filed against Chauvin, and 16 of which were closed with no discipline. And the remaining complaint generated 2 letters of reprimand, one apparently related to the use of a squad car dashboard camera. The records don't include any details on the substance of the complaints. He was also among a group of 5 officers in 2011 who chased down a man named Leroy Martinez in a housing complex after they spotted him running with a pistol, allegedly. I'm just going to keep putting that there because I don't know any of this for sure. One of the officers, Terry Nutter, shot Martinez in the torso, and Martinez survived. All the officers were placed on leave but absolved of any wrongdoing, with Police Chief Timothy Dolan saying they acted appropriately and courageously. There's really not much known overall about the other 4 officers. According to this article, there's records showing that Thao, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right either. Again, this is going to be in the description box. Was sued in federal court in 2017 for alleged excessive force. And according to the lawsuit, Lamar Ferguson claimed Thao and his partner stopped him as he was walking to his girlfriend's house in 2014 for no reason and beat him up. And the city ultimately settled the lawsuit for $25,000. City records show 6 complaints have been filed against Thao. 5 were closed with no discipline. 1 remains open. The records didn't include any further details. Thomas Lane joined the force as a cadet in March 2019. According to online city records, no information about J. Alexander Kwang's service history was immediately available, and city records show no complaints against either of them. Attorneys for Thao and Kwang didn't return messages to the station, and Lane's attorney, Earl Gray, declined comment. Just from what we do know, with a history like that, I just feel very disturbed. In 20 years, you got a complaint for almost every year that you've been working. How many of us, average citizens, can have a complaint about your quality of work that frequent? And I'm sure all of this didn't occur every year. But at what point do we say, you got too many complaints against you? You're just not that good at your job. Can you imagine your boss, your supervisor? Imagine for every year of work you have a disciplinary note or some type of incident. What other field do you get to still show up? It just don't make sense. I've been scouring the internet with all kinds of information popping up. At the time that I'm recording this, the officer, the ex-officer who murdered George, has been charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. And so, what does that really mean? In Minnesota, we know that manslaughter, the sentence for second-degree manslaughter, could get a defendant up to 10 years in prison, and on average, they serve less than 5 years for manslaughter alone. Second-degree manslaughter is a charge along the lines of engaging in reckless behavior. You can knowingly or consciously take a risk that results in the death of a person, such as accidentally shooting someone while hunting for animals. And first-degree manslaughter is charged with killing someone, typically in a heat of passion. The kinds of crimes that you see on Snapped. They didn't intend to kill this person, but they saw them in bed with someone else, their spouse, cheating on them, and they took matters into their own hands. For murder charges in Minnesota, we know that second-degree murder can be an intentional killing, but it's not as serious as first-degree. Second-degree murder can be charged with a defendant intentionally killing another human being, but the murder was not premeditated. Third-degree murder is what this ex-officer has been charged with, and this falls in between the line of manslaughter and third-degree charges. It's not based on having the intent to kill. The third-degree murder is often charged as a depraved heart or mind crime. This charge can arise when a person fires a gun in a crowd without intending to kill anyone, or is charged when a person is killed and the defendant has an indifference to the sanctity of human life. This charge may also result if a person is selling bad drugs, and the maximum penalty for murder is up to 25 years in prison. If the death resulted because of a drug, the fine may be $40,000. I realize I didn't specify this before, but first-degree murder is typically when you have premeditated the murder. You planned on doing it. A spouse killing their other spouse after a domestic, violence incident, or killing a child, killing a police officer, killing a judge, or killing a witness to stop their testimony would all be more likely to land you a first-degree murder charge. And although George's family requested that the conviction be for first degree, looking at the plain definition, I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any legal expertise. I wouldn't charge this officer with third degree. I personally, if I was the prosecution, would go for second. Why is that? Third degree is when you didn't intend to kill someone. It was an accident. You were doing something negligent and it caused the loss of life. Second degree murder is a little different, and it is out of an intense emotional response or impulse, such as killing someone in a drive-by or during the commission of another crime that's unintentional. And no, I don't think that this man was unintentional, but what's the easiest thing for my untrained legal eye to argue? Looking at the video, which unfortunately I've seen clips of because I work really hard not to watch these videos any longer. It just weighs so heavily mentally. There was a moment when people are screaming and saying, "You're going to kill him. He's unconscious," or "He's not responding." They're yelling this out to the officer. He makes eye contact with the people yelling at him and looks down. Him looking up to me says that you've heard these people. And because we know that this officer had a history of other issues with with police brutality and taking things to the extreme, first degree murder might even be easier to argue that this person is unhinged. You've heard these people and you refuse to stop doing what it is that you were doing. You didn't want to stop. Something switched in you. Whether it was a realization that you could finally kill someone, maybe you've been depraved and you've been wanting to do it, I don't know. But the look of evil on that man's face, his complete apathy to what was going on, that's the charge I would have went for. Involuntary manslaughter can be argued that you're subduing someone and things took a turn. But anyone with any, I guess, moral conscience, I mean, this is not something that happened in a split second. It's not like, God forbid, a car crash that you know, on impact. This is a video, at least 7 minutes, of someone struggling to breathe, calling out for mercy, and you never giving it to them. So I would say it was voluntary if we were going to add a manslaughter charge. And I'm assuming that manslaughter has to go in conjunction with third degree murder, because third degree is supposed to be a mistake, a act of negligence that's different from the other two more severe crimes. Although this officer was fired, the charges aren't nearly what they should be. And because we know that this officer had a history of other issues with with police brutality and taking things to the extreme, first degree murder might even be easier to argue that this person is unhinged. I don't know, but I really pray that the defense for this family knows exactly what they're doing. Because even with those charges, 25 years for third degree, and on average, people serving only 5 for involuntary, for a max of 10, that could potentially just be 35 years if issued concurrently. For someone that took someone's life. So these Minnesota riots in the past few days have had me on edge. I understand the need to go out there and put your voice and yourself in action. But protests always scare me. And why do they scare me? When it comes to Black people protesting for civil rights, there's always saboteurs. There's always instigators who want to take it to the next level. They want to up the ante to get a riot for their own motivation. Not because they're concerned, not because they're in mourning, not because they're so fed up. They do it for their own evil. And I would go as far as say it's not just for black protests, but any type of freedom movement. Any type of freedom movement. It's the same thing every single time. And so I made some notes. On Twitter, people are saying, who are in Minnesota, who are out here, putting themselves on the line for these past few days, they're saying that there are known undercover police officers who have vandalized buildings, shattering windows, and lighting buildings ablaze. If you don't believe me, you can check out some of these clips and you will see that this person appears to have a different motivation than the mass majority. Even when confronted, the response is more violence than, oh, okay, well, if this is not what the masses are doing. I mean, you go into a protest, everyone, for the most part, who's there in a protest of anything, you have an agenda. You have the way that you want things to go. And if the masses are not okay with how you're protesting, as a fellow protester, someone calls you out, hey, don't do that. You may say, oh, let me not do that. Okay, sorry guys. I'll be a better citizen in this moment. Not try to, incite a fight with someone else.
Police station right there. That's why I'm doing this to you guys. What the? I ain't got part of that shit. Dude. Oh, I zoomed in. I'll zoom out a little bit. Those cops will come for you if you're pulling that crap.
Looks like, yeah. So as you can see, the auto goes.
Guy just came with a hammer and smashed the windows.
I'm gonna fight you right now. You wanna go? What's up? Somebody hold my blunt.
Hey,
Somebody hold my blunt. I'm gonna get you. Hey. Are you a fucking cop? What's up?
It's a known tactic to have saboteurs among the mix. We know that it happened with Ferguson. I mean, this was talked about. Any grassroots organization, any freedom movement, we know that it happened in Chile. We know that it's happened in Spain in the past year when they were fighting for their own freedom movement. People do these things. They set, I think in Chile they set the subways on fire and blamed it on the protesters. Average citizens, I don't think, would know how to set things ablaze without potentially causing harm to other people. Again, if you don't believe me, you can look up COINTELPRO. You can look up the way that MLK was assassinated. That was a complete government, United States sanctioned job. That information is out there. That's not me speculating. I'm going to post clips of, what I've seen on Twitter, if I haven't already.
You did that on purpose. You just destroyed it. You destroyed a peaceful protest. Why did you do that? An innocent man died. He had a family. He had parents.
You just got on camera. You were playing it back.
Represent yourself.
And this man was part about.
And I walked past and I heard he repeating. That's why I came.
This is what I saw.
This is not me speculating. This is not me trying to get a rise out of people. These are things that are out there. The FBI releases information, I think, every 20 years or so after some of these things happen. You know, this is nothing new. This is nothing new. You know, any freedom movement where people are willing to die for something, willing to die. I mean, that's really where we're at, right? Just last night, Donald Trump posted this tweet threatening protesters. And my heart sank, because that too is why I am so leery of protest. This is an election year. There is nothing that operates in a vacuum. Okay? And it's obvious that the powers that be are trying to fuel these racial tensions to a boiling point. Okay? All of this. I mean, trying to sabotage protest, calling for violence against protesters. You know, some people ask, why did the protesters attack and loot Target and burn it to the ground? I don't even know if they truly burnt Target to the ground. I don't know. I don't know if they burned any of these buildings down. That is a speculation. That is a speculation. We don't know who set any of these buildings on fire. The only videos I have are of the only videos I've seen thus far has been a identified police officer shattering windows and damaging a building, and who seems to be volatile when confronted. We see these newscasters or these reporters playing gunshots on their phone, okay? Allegedly playing gunshots on their phone when they're confronted by protesters asking them, why are they recording that on their phone while they're supposed to be reporting on what's going on, to make the scene look bad. And so, as there will probably continue to be protests in other cities, we've seen protests in LA, I'm sure other cities will follow. I want to remind people to be safe, to be wary, to look at your surroundings. A lot of people online who've had any kind of protest have talked about the importance of looking at your surroundings, the importance of taking to higher ground so that you can see saboteurs in the mix, because they'll always deviate from the crowd so that they can work their agenda. There's always going to be saboteurs when it comes to these things. The reasons why Target was hit. Allegedly, protesters were tear gassed, and they went into Target to purchase milk to help with the tear gas. Target refused to sell them milk, allegedly. And the protesters were upset. Apparently, this Target is also a security, testing site. They try out new strategies in this store to see how to better regulate their store security countrywide. And so, if I'm not mistaken too, Minnesota is the headquarters for Target. And so this place acted as a research space for them. And so typically when you do see Targets, they're almost never in poor communities, poor neighborhoods. I don't know what the community reflected in this Target, but it seems to be a consensus online that this target always tried out new security protocols that would then later be implemented throughout the country. So that's something to keep in mind. And it's also said that this target supports the police station, which was right across the street. I don't know if that means financial. I don't know if clearly in action, if you're not going to sell protesters milk, you know, your job is not to act as a liaison for the state. You're a private company. You need to just focus on making your money. And I think things went downhill from that denial of sale until Target was up in flames. There's been so much updates, so many changes. George Floyd was apparently engaged to be married, and his fiance shared with the media that she doesn't think George would support these protests, that he would give grace. He would give grace. I'm not going to misquote her, but she did say that he would give grace at this time. He wouldn't want violence. And so she said there's a lot of people hating right now. I don't know if it's because she doesn't live this experience, you know, living in the skin. Maybe it just doesn't fully make sense for her. But I don't think too many people are hating right now. I think a lot of people are hurting, are scared, and are tired, mentally and emotionally exhausted. I feel exhausted every time I pick up my phone, and I wish I could put it down, but at the same time, you want to know what's going to happen next. I mean, these protests, wherever they occur, in every city, whoever sparks it up this time, they're never just about that one person. It's about everyone's life who hangs in the balance, everyone who has died and everyone who's still alive. And it's for everyone who feels the pain, who mourns. I mean, it really takes on a life of its own when you hear these stories. And it doesn't matter where you live or where you work or what degrees you have or how you dress. There's always going to be a Barbecue Becky. There's always going to be a Tom Austin who wants you to explain your existence, to justify why you deserve to be in the same space, doing the same things, having the same opportunities that they have. And it's an irritant when you're doing your own thing, living your own life. Hateful people want to take it. Any semblance of joy, any semblance of peace. And I really hope that this officer never finds peace. Whether he actually sees a day in a jail cell or not, I hope that his spirit can never rest. There's an ongoing investigation for the other officers who sat idly by while this all took place. They have not been charged, which is also disturbing, because if you or I, pick up our friend who just robbed a bank, whether you knew about it or not, you drive off with them, you're automatically an accomplice. Now you have to defend yourself. But you would be facing some type of charge as an accomplice because you helped them get away. These police officers were lined up when Target was burning, when all of this was going down, just a few nights ago. These police officers were all outside of the station, as some videos showed at some point, and all outside of the offending officer's house. And I know I keep calling him an officer, he's an ex-officer, but I refuse to say his name. Standing outside of the house in full riot gear to defend the house that, if they think anything like me, this man and his family is not in. Because with a situation like this, I would have packed up. If I, was on top of risk management for the police department, or even just common sense, something so publicized, something that's causing a lot of traction, you gotta pick up and you gotta go. You gotta go to a different location, at least a few hours outside of the city, and pray to God that no one saw you. Because it's the world we're living in. And so what can we do to help? There's the Minnesota Bail Fund, where you can send in your donations to help protesters get out of prison. There's so many people who, when arrested, are not able to afford bail, and so they stay in jail sometimes weeks, months, years before they ever see a trial, because they just couldn't afford it. They didn't have any collateral to put up. They didn't have any finances to put up. And so you donating to help get protesters out of prison or jail until they're able to defend themselves in court is so paramount. That is an action item that you can take. You can continue to call the mayor, the DA, sign petitions requesting that all of these officers be convicted. At the point that the offending officer has not been has not been given first degree murder, I don't know if there's any changes that can be made with that legally. There is something called double jeopardy, so if he doesn't see the inside of a jail at the end of this, he cannot be tried for this crime again, unfortunately. But hopefully we can get the other officers convicted, because they stood idly by and watched this happen and did nothing. So those are the things that you can do to make a change. If you choose to protest or if you choose not, those are still action items that you can take. For those of you who desire to protest, please be safe. Please be safe. Please be vigilant. Please protect your face, protect your eyes. That means wearing goggles or things like that to protect your eyes from tear gas and God knows what else. Please be careful. And to really watch out. I don't know if the National Guard has made it down to Minnesota and has showed up on the scene just yet, but after Trump's tweets last night, I can only imagine it shouldn't take too long. For all I know, they're probably out there as I'm recording this. And that's so disturbing and scary for all parties involved, because up until now, there's no fatalities with these protests, but when you start encouraging the military and the armed forces to assault and kill protesters, that is a new ball game. And so how can we find peace? I was hoping to do a quarantine video about finding our inner peace, our inner zen, and relaxing and making the most of this time. But really, I just want us all to be safe, take a break. If you have to uninstall your social media apps, then do just that. My old English literature professor, we used to call our high school teachers professors, he always said this quote. I'm not sure where he got it from, but it was, believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who said it, no matter if I've said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. So even though I've laid out all this information, you don't have to blindly agree, you don't have to blindly trust, but I do hope that you hear, you listen with the intent to understand and not the intent to correct or to try to tell someone else how they should feel about something. That you take it and receive it. If it doesn't resonate with you, then that's fine. And if it does, that hopefully you'll be called to some action, that you will either donate or call the mayor, call the DA, and just do whatever it is that you can. I will be linking some information down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching Puffs of Thought. And just wanted to share my piece. I hope that we all can find peace. I hope that George's family, Ahmaud's family, Brianna's family can find peace at this time. I hope that George's family can get justice. I hope that Brianna's family can find justice. I hope that Ahmaud's family can find justice. I thoroughly encourage you to look into all of their stories and see what it is that you can do to support them.